Detective Aisha Reynolds stood perfectly still as Officer Travis Langford's hand drifted toward his holster. His voice cut through the warm Saturday air like a blade. "I said move along. We don't need your kind loitering where families are trying to enjoy themselves." Around them, parents at the Little League field stopped mid-conversation. Children clutched baseball gloves. Someone's phone camera swiveled toward the scene. Aisha's gym bag lay open on the dusty ground. Its contents spilled like evidence at a crime scene. A water bottle, protein bars, training manuals with federal seals barely visible. Travis's partner circled behind her, hand near her taser. Aisha kept her hands visible, her breathing measured. She'd been accused of crimes before, but never while simply existing. Have you ever been treated as suspicious for doing something completely ordinary and realized your very presence was considered evidence? Earlier that morning, Aisha had arrived at Milbrook Township's Lincoln Park baseball complex as the sun barely crested the tree line. Dew still clung to the outfield grass. She carried her black tactical duffel, the same one she'd used for years, and a professional clipboard with laminated pages tucked inside a leather case. This wasn't her first visit to the facility. She'd studied the layout online, reviewed the field permit applications, and coordinated with the township's recreation department. Today marked the final preparation day before the youth training clinic. Aisha ran these clinics across Michigan, teaching conflict resolution and critical thinking to kids who dreamed of careers in law enforcement. She set her bag on the aluminum bleachers near third base. The small FBI training academy patch on the side pocket faced inward, barely noticeable. Inside the bag's main compartment sat her laminated field permit, valid through December, issued by Milbrook Township itself. Her federal credentials holder rested in the side pocket next to her personal phone. Aisha pulled out her clipboard and began walking the perimeter. She noted sightlines, emergency exits, and shade coverage. She completed her assessment and settled onto the bleachers to review her training curriculum. These real-life stories of community policing successes would anchor the session. A silver Ford Explorer with municipal plates pulled into the parking lot. A woman in her 40s stepped out, noticed Aisha, and paused. She stared for nearly half a minute before returning to her vehicle. Aisha watched her make a phone call, gesturing toward the field. Officer Travis Langford arrived shortly after. His patrol car rolled slowly through the lot, tires crunching gravel. He parked at an angle that blocked the main exit. His partner, Officer Lena Nakamura, emerged from the passenger side. Both approached with hands near their duty belts. Travis spoke first, his tone already accusatory. "Ma'am, we've had reports. This is a family area. What's your business here?" Aisha stood calmly, her hands visible. "Good morning, officers. I'm preparing for a youth training clinic scheduled for tomorrow. I have my field permit right here." She reached slowly for her bag. Travis's hand shot up. "Stop. Don't move." "I'm reaching for my documentation," Aisha explained, her voice level. "It's in the front pocket." Travis stepped closer, his boots scuffing the concrete. "Anyone can print fake permits online. We need to see some ID." Aisha retrieved her wallet carefully, extracting her driver's license. As she pulled it free, her federal credentials holder became partially visible. A leather case with an embossed eagle and the letters FBI in small gold print along the edge. Travis snatched her license without examining the credential case. He glanced at the ID, then back at Aisha. "This says Detroit." "You're 40 minutes from home. What are you really doing here?" "I live in Detroit," Aisha confirmed. "I work throughout the state. My permit specifies I don't need a story." Travis interrupted. He turned to Lena. "Check her bag." Lena hesitated, then began emptying the duffel's contents onto the bleachers. A water bottle rolled onto the ground. Training manuals spilled out, their covers showing federal seals and behavioral analysis frameworks. A small notebook filled with lesson plans. A first aid kit. Travis picked up one of the manuals, flipped through 3 pages, and dropped it. "You think carrying government books makes you legit? These touching stories about training don't mean anything." Aisha's phone buzzed. The caller ID flashed FBI Detroit Field. She reached for it instinctively. Travis's hand clamped around her wrist. "Don't even think about it." "That's my office," Aisha said quietly. "I need to answer." Travis seized the phone and silenced it. "You can call whoever you want from the station. Right now, you're being detained for trespassing and suspicious activity." Aisha felt her pulse quicken, but kept her expression neutral. "Officers, I have federal credentials in my bag. If you'd examine them." Travis waved dismissively. Fake badges are all over the internet. You think I'm stupid? People like you always have elaborate cover stories. Behind them, a white SUV pulled into the lot. A woman named Rachel Bennett, mother of 3, stepped out with her youngest daughter. She'd come early to reserve good bleacher seating for the later game. Rachel noticed the scene immediately and pulled out her phone. Travis spotted her filming. "Ma'am, delete that video. This is official police business." Rachel kept recording. "I'm on public property. I'm documenting what I see." "I said delete it," Travis snapped, "or I'll cite you for obstruction." Rachel didn't lower her phone. "You're detaining someone for sitting on bleachers. I'm capturing it." Travis muttered something to Lena, who radioed for backup. Aisha remained motionless, her mind cataloging every detail: badge numbers, exact phrasing, the angle of Travis's body camera, which she noticed was angled downward, not capturing his face or hers properly. 2 more patrol cars arrived. Sergeant Vance Riley, Travis's watch commander, emerged from the lead vehicle. He was a long-time veteran with a reputation for backing his officers without question. Vance surveyed the scene. "What have we got?" Travis gestured toward Aisha. "Suspicious person. Refused to leave when asked. Claims she has permits and credentials, but nothing checks out. I'm recommending we bring her in for processing." Vance looked at Aisha for the first time. His expression hardened. "She fits the description from the call. Better safe than sorry." "Description of what?" Aisha asked evenly. "I'd like to hear exactly what I'm suspected of doing." Vance ignored her. "Travis, cuff her. We'll sort this out downtown." Aisha felt the metal close around her wrists. The sensation triggered something primal. A flash of rage she forced down immediately. Her voice stayed calm. "I want this on body camera, all of it." Travis smirked. "Oh, it is. You're going to look real stupid when this is over." As they guided her toward the patrol car, Aisha spoke once more, loud enough for Rachel's camera to catch. "My name is Detective Aisha Reynolds. Remember that name." Travis pushed her head down as she entered the vehicle. "Save the theatrics. Nobody cares." The patrol car's interior smelled of disinfectant and old coffee. Aisha sat in silence as Travis drove toward the station, Lena in the passenger seat. Neither officer spoke. The radio crackled with routine traffic. A fender bender on the highway. A noise complaint on a nearby street. They arrived at Milbrook Township Police Department headquarters, a squat brick building with narrow windows and an American flag hanging limp in the still air. Travis parked in the bay reserved for processing. As Aisha stepped out, still handcuffed, she noticed the security camera above the entrance was angled perfectly to capture her arrival. The building's cornerstone read, "Dedicated to Service and Justice," and a small group of officers stood near the side entrance, watching. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Travis removed Aisha's handcuffs only to recuff her to a metal ring bolted to a processing table. A desk sergeant, a balding man in his 60s, barely looked up from his paperwork. "Name," Travis said, pulling out a form. "Aisha Elizabeth Reynolds." She provided her Detroit residence. Travis wrote slowly, his pen scratching across carbon paper. Every few seconds, he glanced at her as if expecting her to confess something. "Why were you at Lincoln Park?" he asked. "I told you I'm conducting a youth training clinic tomorrow. I had a field permit." Travis's jaw tightened. "Where's this permit now?" "In my bag, which you took." He left the room without responding. Lena remained standing near the door, her arms crossed. She looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Aisha met her eyes once and Lena glanced away. Meanwhile, Rachel Bennett's video had begun circulating. She posted it to the Milbrook Township Community Facebook group. The caption read, "Black woman arrested at Lincoln Park for sitting on bleachers. Officers refused to check her permit. This is wrong." The post gained hundreds of reactions and dozens of comments. Most were supportive. "This is disgusting. I know her. She's a trainer. Rachel, send this to the news." But others cut differently. "Finally, officers keeping our kids safe." She should have just left when asked. Why was she there so early? Suspicious. A parent named Marcus Torres commented, "Wait, I recognize her. She gave a presentation at my son's school last year, FBI Community Outreach Program. She's legit." Another parent replied, "Are you sure? How do we know it's the same person?" Marcus responded with a photo from the school event. Aisha standing beside an FBI field agent, both in professional attire. A banner behind them reading, "Building Trust Through Education." The thread exploded. Someone tagged the local news. WKMJ Channel 7 picked up the story. Their initial tweet read, Breaking: black woman arrested at Milbrook baseball field. Video shows officers refusing to check credentials. Developing story. Inside the station, Aisha remained in processing. Travis returned with her bag and dumped its contents onto the table. He picked through each item slowly: the manuals, the water bottle, a granola bar, a small notebook. He opened the notebook and read aloud mockingly. Lesson 3: De-escalation techniques for high-stress encounters. He snorted. Maybe you should have used these on yourself. Aisha said nothing. Her silence seemed to irritate him more than any argument could. Sergeant Vance Riley entered the room. Status? Travis shrugged. Still processing. No warrants. ID checks out, but that doesn't mean much. Vance leaned against the wall. What's your gut say? She's hiding something, Travis said confidently. People don't just hang around parks for hours unless they're up to no good. Vance nodded. Finish the paperwork. If nothing pops, we'll issue a trespassing warning and release her. Aisha spoke for the first time in a while. You're issuing a warning for sitting on public property with a valid permit. Vance's expression hardened. You're getting a warning for refusing to cooperate with a lawful investigation. I cooperated fully, Aisha said calmly. I offered my permit, my credentials, and my identification. Officer Langford refused to examine them. That's not how I saw it, Travis interjected. Aisha met his eyes. Then check your body camera footage. Travis's face flushed slightly. Vance shifted his weight. Neither man responded immediately. Police Chief Teresa Vargas held a hastily arranged press conference. She stood behind a podium, bearing the department seal, flanked by 2 officers. Reporters from local stations and a regional newspaper filled the small briefing room. Chief Vargas read from a prepared statement. This morning, officers responded to a community concern regarding suspicious activity at Lincoln Park Baseball Complex. Upon arrival, they encountered an individual who refused to provide adequate identification and became argumentative. The individual was detained for processing and later released without charges. Our officers acted appropriately and within departmental guidelines. A reporter from WKMJ raised her hand. Chief Vargas, video footage shows the woman was cooperative. She offered a permit. Can you explain why officers didn't verify it? Vargas's jaw tightened. I haven't reviewed all footage yet. What I can tell you is that our officers prioritize public safety. When someone refuses to leave a public space after being asked, we have protocols. Was she actually asked to leave before being detained? Another reporter pressed. I'm not going to litigate every detail of an ongoing matter, Vargas said curtly. Next question. Back in processing, Aisha sat in a holding area, her belongings still scattered on the table. A female officer she hadn't seen before approached with a clipboard. You need to sign this acknowledgement of trespassing warning. Aisha read the form carefully. It stated she'd been found loitering without permission and warned against returning to Lincoln Park. This is inaccurate, she said. I had permission. I'm not signing. The officer sighed. Then you'll stay here until you do. That's illegal detainment, Aisha replied evenly. You have no charges. You have no grounds to hold me. The officer walked away without responding. A young attorney named Marcus Hale from the Michigan ACLU called the station. He'd seen Rachel's video and demanded Aisha's immediate release. The desk sergeant transferred him to Vance Riley, who insisted everything was by the book. Marcus countered with specific statute citations and threatened federal litigation. Soon after, Aisha was released. Travis escorted her to the lobby. As he handed back her belongings, he leaned close. Stay out of places you don't belong. Next time won't be so easy. Aisha took her bag without responding. She walked through the front doors and stopped. 19 people stood in the parking lot holding handmade signs. Justice for Aisha. Check the permit next time. Black lives are not suspicious. Rachel Bennett stood at the front of the group. When she saw Aisha, tears welled in her eyes. We couldn't just do nothing. Aisha's composure cracked for the first time. Her eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. Thank you. This won't happen again. Not to me. Not to anyone. She pulled out her phone, photographed the police station from 3 angles, checked her watch, and made one call. The person on the other end answered immediately. Aisha spoke 4 sentences, then hung up. Inside the station, Travis watched through the window. He turned to Lena, another one who learned her place. Lena's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. Travis, what if those credentials were real? He laughed. Then she'd have said something. Relax. Sunday morning arrived cold and gray. Travis Langford pulled into the station parking lot early for his shift. He liked arriving before most officers. It gave him time to check emails, review the previous night's reports, and enjoy coffee in peace. But today, something was different. 4 black SUVs with government plates lined the visitor spaces. Travis recognized the makes, Ford Expedition's standard federal issue. His stomach tightened slightly, but he dismissed it. Probably some joint task force meeting about drug trafficking. He walked toward the employee entrance. His locker was on the second floor, number 47, same spot for 15 years. When he reached it, his hand froze on the handle. A federal evidence seal covered the lock, bright yellow tape with black lettering. Do not tamper. Federal investigation. Travis stepped back. His mind raced. This had to be a mistake. Maybe the locker next to his. He checked. Number 46 untouched, number 48 normal. A voice behind him said, "Officer Langford." He turned. A man in a dark suit, mid-50s with silver hair and a federal credentials case clipped to his belt, stood a few feet away. "I'm Assistant Director Harlan Whitaker, FBI Detroit Field Office. Chief Vargas needs to see you immediately. Conference Room A." Travis's mouth went dry. "What's this about?" Whitaker's expression remained neutral. "Conference Room A. Now." The walk down the hallway felt surreal. Other officers stared as Travis passed. The station's usual morning energy, jokes, coffee machine chatter, shift briefings, had been replaced by tense silence. Everyone knew something big was happening. Conference Room A was the largest in the building, typically used for community presentations and award ceremonies. When Travis entered, he counted 11 people. Chief Vargas sat at the head of the table, her face pale and drawn. Beside her, a woman in her 30s with a Department of Justice lanyard, a man in Michigan State Police uniform with captain's bars, 2 FBI agents Travis didn't recognize, an internal affairs investigator he'd seen once at a misconduct hearing, Frank Donovan, the police union president, and Aisha Reynolds. She sat near the center of the table, no longer in casual athletic wear. She wore a charcoal suit, crisp white blouse, and federal credentials displayed openly on her belt. Her expression was calm, almost serene. Travis's legs felt weak. He remained standing near the door. Whitaker gestured to an empty chair. "Sit down, Officer Langford." Travis sat. His hands trembled slightly, so he folded them in his lap. Whitaker opened a leather portfolio. "Officer Langford, do you know who Detective Aisha Reynolds is?" Travis glanced at Aisha, then back at Whitaker. "That's the woman from yesterday. We responded to a suspicious person call at Lincoln Park. She was loitering." Whitaker raised a hand. "Let me rephrase. Do you know what Detective Reynolds does professionally?" Travis hesitated. She said she was running some kind of clinic." Whitaker's voice remained even, almost clinical. "Detective Aisha Reynolds is the lead instructor for the FBI's implicit bias and de-escalation training program. She trains federal agents across 6 states. She's conducted workshops for over 40 police departments, including Detroit PD, Lansing PD, and Grand Rapids PD. She holds advanced degrees in criminal psychology and behavioral analysis. She's testified before Congress twice on policing reform." The room tilted slightly. Travis gripped the table edge. Whitaker continued. "For months leading up to this, your department has been requesting her training. This stems from a Department of Justice pattern and practice investigation that identified significant concerns about discriminatory policing in Milbrook Township. Detective Reynolds arrived to assess your facility and observe community interactions before conducting her scheduled workshop. That workshop was supposed to begin tomorrow morning in this building with you and every other officer here in attendance." Travis's throat constricted. I didn't know. She never said." Aisha spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. "Officer Langford, I told you I had credentials. You refused to look. I told you I had a field permit. You dismissed it. I told you I was preparing for a training clinic. You mocked it. At what point in our interaction did you allow me to explain who I was?" Travis opened his mouth, but no words came. Aisha stood and walked to a laptop connected to the room's projection screen. She pressed a key. Footage appeared. Aerial view of Lincoln Park. "This is from my body camera," Aisha explained. "FBI issued active recording. You never asked me if I was wearing one. You assumed I wasn't." The footage rolled. Aisha's arrival at the park, Her walking the perimeter, sitting on the bleachers, the silver Explorer pulling in, the phone call, then Travis's arrival, the audio was crystal clear. Every word of their conversation played back. Travis's voice saying, "We don't need your kind," loitering. His refusal to examine the permit. His dismissal of her credentials as fake. Aisha paused the video. 47 minutes of footage, every second documented. She advanced to another clip. "This is your body camera, Officer Langford. Or rather, what should have been recorded on your body camera. The screen showed static. You told me everything was being recorded. You said, quote, 'You're going to look real stupid,' but your camera was off. It didn't activate until you reached the station." Sergeant Vance Riley shifted in his seat. Whitaker made a note on his pad. Aisha pulled up a new image, a photograph from years earlier at a public rally. Travis, younger, standing behind 3 men who held Confederate flags. One wore a shirt with a white nationalist slogan. Travis's face was clearly visible, smiling. "This photo surfaced during our routine background check," Aisha said. "We run these on all departments requesting federal training. It's part of our vetting process to ensure we're not training officers with extremist affiliations." Travis's face flushed. "That was years ago. I didn't know those guys. I was just at a rally." "A rally organized by a group flagged by the FBI's Domestic Terrorism Task Force," Whitaker interjected. "Continue, Detective Reynolds." Aisha displayed a map. "Here's Lincoln Park Baseball Complex, and here," she circled a location 300 yards away, "is where that rally was held. You arrested me in the same park where you posed with individuals holding symbols of racial oppression." "Pattern matters, Officer Langford." The DOJ attorney spoke up, her voice crisp and formal. "Officer Langford, over the next 2 hours, will be presenting comprehensive evidence of a pattern and practice violation. But let's address your immediate legal exposure. You detained a federal agent without cause. You refused to verify offered credentials. You ignored a valid municipal permit. You filed a false report stating Detective Reynolds was argumentative when video evidence shows she was cooperative. You claimed your body camera was active when it wasn't. Each of these actions violates federal civil rights statutes." Travis's union rep, Frank Donovan, leaned forward. "My client was responding to a 911 call. He had reasonable suspicion." Aisha cut in. The 911 call came from an anonymous source. No description was provided. The caller said only, "There's a black woman at the field. Seems suspicious." That was the entire report. Officer Langford arrived and immediately escalated without conducting any investigative inquiry. She pulled up the dispatch audio. A female voice said exactly what Aisha had quoted. Nothing more. Whitaker folded his hands. "Officer Langford, this isn't just about you, but you're the catalyst. This department has a documented history of discriminatory stops, excessive force against people of color, and a culture that protects officers who engage in biased policing. You had an opportunity to do your job correctly. Instead, you demonstrated precisely why this department needs federal intervention." Chief Vargas finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Travis, is there anything you want to say?" Travis's mind raced through possible defenses. He was following protocol. He was protecting the community. He was doing his job. But every excuse died before reaching his lips. The footage didn't lie. The data didn't lie. I thought I was doing the right thing," he managed. Aisha sat back down, her eyes locked on his. "You saw a black woman and created your own narrative. You didn't ask questions. You didn't verify facts. You saw what you expected to see. That's not policing, Officer Langford. That's prejudice with a badge." The room fell silent. Outside, the morning shift change was underway. Officers arriving, patrol cars leaving, the ordinary rhythm of a Sunday in Milbrook Township. But inside Conference Room A, everything had changed. Whitaker closed his portfolio. "We'll take a 15-minute break. When we return, we'll present the full evidentiary record and discuss next steps." As people filed out, Travis remained seated, staring at his hands. Lena Nakamura, who'd been sitting quietly in the back, approached him. "Travis, I'm testifying. I'm telling them everything. I should have stopped you yesterday. I didn't, but I won't stay silent now." She walked away, leaving Travis alone with the weight of what he'd done and what was coming next. Days later, the conference room in the Detroit Federal Building held a meeting that would determine Milbrook Township's future. The space was larger than the one at the police station, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. 14 people sat around a massive oak table. The federal contingent arrived first. FBI Regional Director Patricia Ellison, 3 attorneys from the DOJ Civil Rights Division, 2 analysts from the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, and Aisha Reynolds. They arranged thick binders and laptops with practiced efficiency. Milbrook Township's delegation entered. Chief Vargas, City Attorney Robert Caldwell, 2 Assistant City Attorneys, Union President Frank Donovan, his lawyer, and Travis Langford with his union-appointed counsel. Travis looked like he hadn't slept. His tie was crooked, his face drawn. Lena Nakamura sat apart from both groups. Her immunity agreement signed the previous day. She'd been granted protection in exchange for complete testimony. Her decision to cooperate had fractured relationships within the department, but she'd told her wife the night before, "I can't be part of this anymore." Director Ellison called the meeting to order. "We're here to discuss findings from the Department of Justice's investigation into Milbrook Township Police Department. This investigation was initiated following a pattern and practice inquiry and accelerated after the recent events. Let's begin." The lead DOJ attorney, Catherine Ellis, stood and activated the projection system. The first slide read, "The United States versus Milbrook Township Police Department, Civil Rights Act violations, 42 U.S.C. Section 14,141. Robert Caldwell, the city attorney, interjected immediately. "We dispute the characterization that this rises to pattern and practice. The incident with Detective Reynolds was isolated, and we're prepared to address it independently." Ellis didn't acknowledge the interruption. She advanced the slide. "Let's examine whether this is isolated." The screen filled with data. Stop rate disparity analysis over the past 5 years. Milbrook Township demographics. Population 11,400, 11% Black, 76% White, 9% Hispanic, 4% Other. Now, let's look at police stops during this period. The chart showed brutal clarity. Black residents, 11% of population, 43% of all stops. White residents, 76% of population, 34% of all stops. Hispanic residents, 9% of population, 18% of all stops. Black residents are stopped at 4 times the rate their population would predict. Ellis continued, "But it gets worse. After being stopped, black individuals receive citations 67% of the time. White individuals, 23%. Black individuals are arrested at a rate 8.2 times higher than white individuals for identical offenses. These are not opinions. These are your department's own records." Chief Vargas stared at the table. Robert Caldwell scribbled notes furiously. Ellis advanced the slide again. Officer Travis Langford's record. Travis's history appeared. 217 stops, 184 involving people of color. That represented 84.7% of his stops, despite people of color comprising only 24% of the township's population. Officer Langford has used force 12 times in 5 years, Ellis stated. 11 of those incidents involved people of color, 0 involved white residents. He's had 23 complaints filed against him. 0 were sustained, not 1. Meanwhile, the township has paid $340,000 settling lawsuits related to stops where Officer Langford was the primary officer. That's taxpayer money compensating for constitutional violations. Frank Donovan spoke up. "High complaint rates don't prove misconduct. Some officers work high crime areas." "Officer Langford's beat includes Lincoln Park," Ellis interrupted, "a recreational area with below-average crime rates." Next slide. Internal communications filled the screen. Text messages obtained via federal subpoena. Travis's phone number was highlighted. The first message sent to fellow officers the day of Aisha's detention read, "Another one off the streets. Kept the park clean today." A group chat named Cleanup Crew appeared next. 7 officers were members. The messages showed memes mocking arrestees, jokes about thinning the herd, and comments celebrating aggressive stops. One message from Officer Tim Rodriguez read, "Travis got another one today. Park security stays winning." Sergeant Vance Riley's email appeared next, sent to Chief Vargas 3 months earlier. "We've had complaints about over-policing in minority neighborhoods. My response, better over-police than under-protect our taxpayers. We're here to serve the people who fund us." The room was silent except for the hum of the projector. Aisha stood. She'd remained quiet until now, but her presence commanded immediate attention. "I'd like Officer Nakamura to provide her testimony." Lena walked to the front of the room. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice was clear. "I arrived at Lincoln Park with Officer Langford. Before we exited the vehicle, Travis said, and these are his exact words, 'Let's make this quick. She'll either run or give us a reason.' I asked what he meant. He said, 'They always do.'" Lena's voice wavered, but she continued. "When we approached Detective Reynolds, she was cooperative. She offered her field permit immediately. Travis refused to look at it. I asked him why. He said, 'They always have fake paperwork.' When I suggested we call the Recreation Department to verify her permit, he told me it was a waste of time. He said, 'Look at her. She doesn't belong here.'" Travis's lawyer started to object, but Lena raised her hand. "I'm not finished. When Detective Reynolds showed her federal credentials holder, I saw it clearly. I told Travis. He said, 'Fake badges all over the internet. Don't be naive.' I should have insisted we verify them. I didn't. I was afraid of contradicting my training officer. That's my responsibility, and I own it. But I won't lie about what happened." Lena sat down. Travis stared at the table, his jaw clenched. Catherine Ellis returned to the presentation. "We now present the Department of Justice's formal resolution offer. 2 paths appeared on screen. Option A, consent decree, federal oversight, duration 5 years under federal court monitoring, complete policy review and rewrite by independent experts, quarterly compliance audits, estimated cost $4.7 million over 5 years, early intervention system for officer misconduct, community accountability board with subpoena power, Officer Travis Langford, immediate termination, pension forfeiture review, permanent prohibition from law enforcement nationwide, Sergeant Vance Riley, demotion mandatory retraining, Chief Teresa Vargas, retirement or reassignment. Option B, federal litigation, Department of Justice files civil rights lawsuit, full discovery phase exposes all department records and communications, estimated legal defense costs 12 to 18 million. Potential punitive damages if DOJ prevails. 50+ million. Officers lose qualified immunity protections in individual capacity suits. Officer Travis Langford faces criminal charges under 18 U.S.C. Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. Maximum sentence 10 years federal prison. Robert Caldwell's face had gone from red to pale. "You're threatening criminal charges." "We're outlining consequences," Ellis corrected. "The criminal referral is already pending review with the U.S. Attorney's Office. That process is independent of this civil resolution." Frank Donovan leaned toward Travis's lawyer and whispered urgently. After a moment, he addressed the room. "The union needs to caucus. We need 30 minutes. "You have 15, Director Ellison said. The Milbrook delegation left. In the hallway, Frank's voice carried back through the door. "We can't defend this. The evidence is overwhelming. Travis is on his own." When they returned, Frank spoke first. "The union withdraws protection from Officer Langford effective immediately. We'll cooperate with reforms in exchange for protecting other officers from individual liability." Travis's face drained of color. His own lawyer looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Donovan, you can't just—" "I can, and I am," Frank said coldly. "I have 800 members to protect. I'm not sacrificing all of them for one officer's mistakes." Aisha stood once more. "Before you make your final decision, I want to be clear about something. I don't want revenge. I want systemic change. Officer Langford is a symptom. Your culture is the disease. Firing him might feel like justice, but it means nothing if the next officer does the same thing." She looked directly at Travis. "I was lucky. I had federal credentials, cameras, witnesses, resources. How many others didn't? How many people did Officer Langford stop who couldn't fight back? How many filed complaints that were dismissed? How many paid fines they shouldn't have owed? That's the real crime here." She turned to Chief Vargas. "You have 48 hours to accept option A. If you choose option B, I will personally testify at every deposition, every hearing, every trial. I will make sure the world knows exactly what happened and why. Not for me. For everyone who came before me and couldn't prove their case." Travis finally spoke, his voice cracking. "I was doing my job. I was protecting the community." Aisha's response was immediate and unwavering. Your job was to serve everyone, not decide who belongs. You saw a black woman and created your own narrative. You never asked questions. You never verified facts. That's not policing. That's prejudice with a badge." The meeting adjourned. Milbrook Township had 48 hours to decide its future. Just before the deadline expired, Robert Caldwell called Catherine Ellis. Milbrook Township accepted the consent decree. The announcement came at a hastily called press conference. Chief Vargas stood at the podium, flanked by the city manager and Robert Caldwell. Her prepared statement was brief. After careful consideration and consultation with federal partners, Milbrook Township Police Department is entering a consent decree with the Department of Justice. We are committed to transparency, accountability, and serving all members of our community with dignity and respect. Reporters shouted questions, but Vargas stepped away without answering. Travis Langford was terminated shortly after the federal building meeting. The termination letter cited multiple policy violations, including failure to verify credentials, deactivation of body camera during official duties, and conduct unbecoming an officer. His application for pension eligibility was denied pending further review. The Michigan Law Enforcement Officers Training Council revoked his certification, making him ineligible for law enforcement work anywhere in the state. Within a week, Travis's name appeared on the National Decertification Index, a database created to prevent problem officers from moving between departments. He couldn't be hired as a police officer anywhere in America. Sergeant Vance Riley was demoted to patrol officer and reassigned to desk duty pending completion of mandatory retraining. 4 officers from the cleanup crew group chat received 30-day suspensions without pay and were placed on 18-month probationary status. Chief Vargas announced her retirement 2 weeks later. Her statement referenced pursuing other opportunities and made no mention of the consent decree. The city launched a national search for her replacement with one requirement. Candidates needed DOJ approval. Lena Nakamura received a commendation for her truthful testimony. She was promoted to detective and appointed as the department's liaison for reform implementation. In a statement to the local newspaper, she said, "Silence is complicity. I should have spoken up years earlier. I won't make that mistake again." The consent decree outlined sweeping reforms, all to be implemented within 90 days. Stop documentation system. Every traffic stop, pedestrian stop, or detention required detailed logging. Officers documented reason for stop, duration, outcome, and demographic information. GPS coordinates tagged each incident automatically. Supervisors reviewed reports within 24 hours. The system flagged patterns. If an officer's stops disproportionately targeted one demographic group, mandatory review triggered. Credential verification protocol. Officers were required to verify all credentials offered during any stop. Federal and state databases were checked before any arrest. If discrepancies appeared, supervisors were contacted immediately. Failure to follow protocol resulted in automatic suspension. Community Accountability Board. 11 civilian members selected to reflect township demographics reviewed every complaint filed against officers. The board had subpoena power and recommended disciplinary action. The department had to comply or publicly justify refusal. Quarterly town halls allowed residents to question department leadership directly. Early intervention system, custom software analyzed officer behavior patterns. The algorithm flagged concerning trends. Disparate stop rates, multiple complaints, use of force frequency above departmental average. 3 flags triggered mandatory counseling and retraining. 6 flags initiated decertification review. Technology upgrades included body cameras that activated automatically when officers exited vehicles or drew weapons. The cameras uploaded footage to independent cloud storage within minutes. No department employee could delete or edit recordings. Dashboard cameras captured front and rear views. A mobile app allowed community members to file complaints with attached photos or videos. Aisha's FBI training program became mandatory. Every officer completed 40 hours annually, double the previous requirement. The curriculum covered implicit bias recognition, de-escalation techniques, cultural competency, and mental health crisis response. Aisha personally conducted the first session in Milbrook Township. 67 officers attended, filling the community center auditorium. Many looked uncomfortable. Some were openly hostile, arms crossed, refusing to make eye contact. But Aisha began the same way she always did, with data. "This isn't about blame," she said. It's about understanding how unconscious bias affects split-second decisions. We all have biases. The question is whether we acknowledge and manage them. She showed footage from her own body camera. The moment Travis's hand moved toward his holster, I'm trained to assess threats. In this moment, I calculated risk factors, hostile body language, verbal aggression, refusal to de-escalate, but I also knew that any defensive move I made would be used against me. So I stayed still. I documented. I waited. The room was silent. "How many of you would have waited?" she asked. "How many would have the option to wait? That's privilege, and that's what we need to talk about." Over the following months, the reforms took hold. Traffic stops of black residents decreased 64%. Use of force incidents dropped 71%. Community approval ratings climbed from 42% to 68%. 0 federal complaints were filed in the first 18 months of the consent decree. 12 officers resigned, citing inability to work under these restrictions. Exit interviews revealed a common theme. They felt the new policies prevented real policing. When asked for specifics, none could articulate what real policing meant beyond trusting officer instincts. The officers who remained reported surprising outcomes. One veteran, a 20-year patrol officer named Carlos Rivera, told a local journalist, "I thought the cameras and paperwork would be a nightmare, but honestly, it's better. We're not covering for bad apples anymore. When someone screws up, we address it." The good cops aren't punished for the bad ones' mistakes. Aisha's work expanded nationally. 47 police departments requested her training after the Milbrook case gained attention. The FBI promoted her to National Training Director for Bias Recognition and Community Policing. She advised DOJ on 12 active consent decrees and testified before a congressional subcommittee on police reform legislation. In a TED Talk that garnered 2 million views, Aisha reflected on the incident. "Rage feels good temporarily. Strategy changes systems. I didn't need to convince one officer I was legitimate. I needed to prove the system protecting him was illegitimate." Months later, Aisha returned to Lincoln Park Baseball Complex. The youth training clinic she'd planned finally took place, expanded and better funded. 140 kids registered, double the previous year's enrollment. Parents volunteered as assistants. Rachel Bennett, the woman who'd filmed Aisha's detention, organized refreshments and coordinated logistics. When Aisha arrived, Rachel hugged her tightly. "You changed this town," she whispered. Aisha smiled. "We changed it. You pulled out your camera when it mattered." The clinic focused on critical thinking, conflict resolution, and understanding law enforcement as a career. Aisha brought guest speakers, FBI agents, civil rights attorneys, community organizers, and Lena Nakamura, who shared her story of choosing truth over loyalty. Local news covered the event. The segment aired with the headline, "From Arrest to Advocate: How One Incident Transformed a Township." The reporter interviewed parents, kids, and Aisha herself. "What do you want people to learn from what happened?" the reporter asked. Aisha considered the question carefully. Being right isn't enough. Being prepared, strategic, and focused on long-term change, that's power. I had cameras, credentials, witnesses, and patience. Most people don't have all those things. That's why systemic change matters more than individual justice. The reporter pressed further. "Do you forgive Officer Langford?" "Forgiveness is personal," Aisha said. "What I care about is whether the system learned, whether the next black woman sitting on bleachers will be treated with dignity, whether officers pause and verify before they assume. That matters more than one man's apology." Travis Langford watched the newscast from his new apartment 3 states away. He'd found work in construction, manual labor that paid a fraction of his previous salary. His marriage had ended. His ex-wife told the divorce mediator she couldn't reconcile who he was with who she thought he was. No criminal charges were ever filed. The U.S. Attorney's Office determined the case met civil rights violation thresholds but declined prosecution, focusing resources instead on the broader consent decree. Travis lived with the knowledge that his actions had triggered federal intervention, cost his town millions, and ended careers. He never issued a public statement. Aisha's impact continued rippling outward. The Michigan State Legislature passed the Credential Verification Act, requiring all law enforcement officers to verify any credentials offered during stops. 5 townships adopted Milbrook's Accountability Board model. A federal grant program funded replication of the reforms in 30 cities nationwide. Aisha published research in the Journal of Criminal Justice, Implicit Bias in Law Enforcement, a data-driven analysis of stop patterns and intervention effectiveness. The paper became required reading in police academies and law schools. She also testified before Congress advocating for a national use of force database and mandatory bias training for all federally funded departments. Her testimony included the video from Lincoln Park. Lawmakers from both parties praised her composure and expertise. But Aisha carried scars. She attended therapy regularly, working through PTSD from the detention. Public spaces sometimes triggered hypervigilance. She struggled with trust, particularly around local police. In one session, her therapist asked how she coped. "I remember why it mattered," Aisha said. "The outcome justified the trauma. If my experience prevents someone else's trauma, it was worth it." Her message to others facing discrimination remained consistent. Document everything. Stay calm. Build your case. Use the system against itself. Power respects strategy, not anger. And for those watching these real-life stories unfold, for those who've witnessed injustice or experienced it themselves, Aisha offered this: your voice matters. Your witness matters. Pull out your camera. File the complaint. Tell your story. Systemic change happens when enough people refuse to stay silent. Black stories like Aisha's remind us that touching stories of resilience aren't just inspirational, they're instructional. They teach us that real stories, the ones where truth defeats injustice, require documentation, patience, and unwavering focus on lasting reform. Aisha Reynolds' story is one of thousands. How many people face the same bias without federal credentials to protect them, without cameras, without witnesses who will risk discomfort to document injustice? Your engagement matters. Here's how you can contribute to change. Share your experience. Comment below if you've witnessed or experienced profiling. Your story adds to the collective record. Every narrative builds pressure for reform. Spread awareness. Share this video. Algorithms reward engagement. Your share amplifies voices that challenge unjust systems. Hold systems accountable. Research your local police department's complaint process. Attend town council meetings. Ask about stop rate data. Transparency requires citizen pressure. Support reform. Learn about consent decrees in your region. Federal oversight works only if communities stay engaged. Subscribe for more. Next video profiles a teacher who dismantled a discriminatory school board using nothing but their own bylaws. We document stories where intelligence defeats injustice. Your comment isn't just engagement, it's amplification. Your like isn't just a metric, it's validation for those who need Aisha's toolkit. Real stories like these show us that touching stories aren't just inspirational, they're blueprints for change. What would you have done in Aisha's position? Tell us below.